Jayo Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Kunja Bihari Jayo Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Rachachana Ranjana Yashodanandana Rachachana Ranjana Yashodanandana Rachachana Ranjana Yashodanandana Rachachana Yamuna Tiravana Chari Yamuna Tiravana Chari Yamuna Tiravana Chari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Kunja Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Rachachana Ranjana Yashodanandana Rachachana Yashodanandana Rachachana Ranjana Yashodanandana Yamuna Tiravana Chari Yamuna Tiravana Chari Yamuna Tiravana Chari Yamuna Tiravana Krishna, 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Srila Prabhupada, Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Srila Prabhupada, Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, Sri Madha Radha Madhava ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Jai Nitai Gaur Premanande. Eight, 7 and 8, chapter 8, yeah. Or is it 6 and 7? What was it? Yeah. It's Canto 5, chapter 8, 6 to 7, verses 6 and 7. You're welcome. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Okay. So we're reading from the Yes, Srimad Bhagavatam, the 5th canto, chapter 8. And I'll read text 6 since it has no purport, and then I guess we'll chant verse 7. Is it there, or we just read it because it's prose?
Yeah, you can read it. You will not recite.
Okay, yeah, makes sense. Tat prasavotsarpana bhaya kedu tatura svaganena viyujyamana kasyanchittaryam krishna sarasati nipapata chamamara. Translation. Being separated from its flock and distressed by its miscarriage, the black doe, having crossed the river, was very much distressed. Indeed, it fell down in a cave and died immediately. Tvam tvena kunakam kripanam srotasanu yamanam abhivikshya pavitam bandhur ivanukam payara charshir parata adhaya mrita mataram ityashrama padam anayat. Word for word or straight translation? Okay, word for word. Tam, that, to, but, ena kunakam, the deer calf, kripanam, helpless, srotasa, by the waves, anuyamanam, floating, abhivikshya, seeing, apavitham, removed from its own kind, bandhu iva, just like a friend, anukampaya, with compassion, Rajarishi Bharata, the great saintly King Bharata, Adaya, taking, Mritta Mataram, who lost its mother, Iti, thus thinking, Ashram Padam, to the ashram, Anayat, brought. Translation, His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. The great King Bharata, while sitting on the bank of the river, saw the small deer, bereft of its mother, floating down the river. Seeing this, he felt great compassion. Like a sincere friend, he lifted the infant deer from the waves and, knowing it to be motherless, brought it to his ashram. Purport. The laws of nature work in subtle ways, unknown to us. Maharaj Bharata was a great king, very advanced in devotional service. He had almost reached the point of loving service to the Supreme Lord. But even from that platform, he could fall down onto the material platform. In Bhagavad Gita, we are therefore warned, Hyamhina vyatayam tyete purusham purusharshaba samadukhka sukham dhiram samritatvaya kalpate. O best among men, O Arjuna, the person who is not disturbed by happiness and distress and is steady in both is certainly eligible for liberation. Spiritual salvation and liberation from material bondage must be worked out with great caution. Otherwise, a little discrepancy will cause one to fall down again into material existence. By studying the activities of Maharaj Bharata, we can learn the art of becoming completely freed from all material attachment. As it will be revealed in later verses, Bharat Maharaj had to accept the body of a deer due to being overly compassionate for this infant deer. We should be compassionate by raising one from the material platform to the spiritual platform. Otherwise, at any moment our spiritual advancement may be spoiled and we may fall down onto the material platform. Maharaj Bharata's compassion for the deer was the beginning of his fall down into the material world. The great King Bharata, while sitting on the bank of the river, saw the small deer, bereft of its mother, floating down the river. Seeing this, he felt great compassion. Like a sincere friend, he lifted the infant deer from the waves and, knowing it to be motherless, brought it to his ashram. Om Agyanti Mirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshuran Militam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Narati Svaparantikam Vandeham Sri Guru Sri Yuta Padakamalam Sri Gurun Vaishnavanscha Shri Rupam Sakrachatam Sahagana Ragunatanvitam Tam Sachivam Satvaitam Sarvadutam Parichana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Sri Vishyakanvitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute He Tapta Kanjana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sutta Devi Pranamami Haripriya Vanchakalpatarupyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavibhyo Namo Namaha Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadha Sri Vasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So, this is a very nice story we get from the Srimad Bhagavatam about the great king, Bharat Maharaj. And when we talk about Bharat Maharaj, we really talk about the great king, in a sense. I mean, this personality was extraordinarily outstanding. His qualities, his achievements, his whole life, his lifespan, the way he used it, is just made of pure glory. We can see that before the reign of Bharat Maharaj, the planet was known as Ajanabha Varsha, and then he became king, and then it was Bharata Varsha. So I guess that's a statement. Like, if after your reign the entire planet basically gets named after you, it's sort of indicating that he was really fully in tune with his duties and with the reign of his kingdom. It's nicely described in the Bhagavatam how he performed all duties, and also performed all duties, for example, to all aspects of the universe, which is the duty of a true king, to like serve his citizens, this planet, and also its planet's relation to the entire universe. So this we do also through respecting and worshipping the demigods. But of course, Bharata Maharaj, he was specifically described as being fully aware why and how he would serve the demigods, because he would serve the demigods as limbs of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He understood that every demigod has a specific role and position in this universe in order to, similarly as him as a king, reign and structure this universe, and especially also this specific planet. Because King Maharaj Bharata, he fully understood that this planet is fully unique within this universe, because it is the planet to create karma and to destine one's journey through this universe. So it's known that in the higher planetary kingdoms, then there is no new karma to be made, but the sukarma, the positive karma one has created, is slowly used up. It is on this planet, it's like sort of the portal in this universe to travel up, down, or even beyond into the spiritual sky. So therefore it's a great responsibility reigning over this planet to make sure that the capacity and the possibility for spiritual advancement and for proper behavior as humankind is given. We experience that today if the reigning kings and presidents and whatnot are basically doing the opposite, right? And not moving us as a society in tune with nature and of course the will of God. And therefore we can experience as devotees how hard it is to swim against this stream of the strong influence of Maya and material enjoyment and attachment that is out there in the world. So we are not being really sheltered as a society into actually advancing spiritually as human beings, or at least mentally, evolutionary, into higher forms of existence so that we can slowly acquire spiritual knowledge. So Bharat Maharaj was so expert and so brilliant in his duties that his entire kingdom could flourish. And his entire kingdom meant the entire planet. So Bharatvarsha, it's now, we know it now, the planet. So we have an extraordinary personality who is in charge of the entire planet, fully aware of his position, in direct communication with the demigods, fully governing this amazing plane, right? Imagine being that person for a moment, just. I mean, if you talk about having a chance to become puffed up, I guess that's it. No, I mean, like, okay, I'm the king of the entire planet. The planet becomes named after me. I'm like respected through the entire universe. I have beautiful 5 sons, fully qualified, and yeah. Actually, it's said that Bharat Maharaj could enjoy his kingdom, and I'm a bit confused by this because it was like 10 times 10,000 years he enjoyed his kingdom. I don't think they lived that long, no, in that Yuga, but I don't get the number. But he like had a lot of enjoyment, a massive amount of facilities too, right? So, and what decides this man to do comes at his time for Vanaprast? Well, he takes it. And he entirely renounces his family, his sons, his citizens, his fame, his kingdom. Entirely renounces it. Starts wearing a deer skin and moves up into, what is the ashram? Pulaha ashram. Yeah, exactly. Muktinath, right? It's Pulaha ashram. It's up in It's Haridwar, but actually I checked it on map. It's like 1,000 kilometers away from Haridwar, actually. But it's that direction is up north, because he also says it's also described to be at the Kali Kandaki River. So that must be basically Pulaha ashram in Nepal, which is Muktinath temple. You know if you know? Yeah, it's quite high up in the Himalayas, and it's basically next to the Kali Kandaki River, because it's also described that in the river where Bharat Maharaj was living, the Shalagram Shila appeared. So it's sort of, I'm not sure, because I also read that Prabhupada writes close to Haridwar, which is like south of Rishikesh, and then toward the northeast, quite far up into the Himalayas, you would get to like Pulaha ashram. I cannot confirm it fully that it's that ashram, but certainly it's up in the Himalayas next to the Kandaki River, Kali Kandaki River, which is like a really important river in our tradition, because it's the origin of the Shalagram Shila, or not the origin, but the Shalagram Shila gets revealed and travels through the, could be, huh? That is,
if this is the place, then Muktinath.
Oh, I thought you were checking that.
Yeah, I'm checking that.
Okay.
But
yeah.
There's something is coming up.
So the point I want to make why we're talking about location is that from like being probably in the most comfortable position he could be as being the king of the entire world, he moved basically up into the Himalayas, into a forest next to a river where it gets super cold in the winter, where there is no facilities at all, where he basically moved into the forest, into a hut, and started really focusing on his sadhana. Now his sadhana mostly was chanting the Omkara, the mantra that is initiated by the Omkara, so the Gayatri mantra. So he was it's specifically mentioned how he was specifically meditating and focusing on the Savitur, on the sun aspect, on this, the Supreme Personality of Godhead as represented through the rays and the emanation of the sun. And like this, he was then sitting in his meditation, and it is actually said that he meditated on the Supreme Lord through the Gayatri Mantra, and he was getting direct darshan of the Supreme Lord. And he sometimes experienced some of the 8 ecstatic symptoms, like tears would fall from his eyes that he couldn't even see anymore, and he would like tremble, his whole body would shake. So he would experience ecstatic symptoms, like direct communicating with the Supreme Lord. So we're talking about a highly advanced devotee who already in his Grihastha ashram performed his duties perfectly, performed so many yagyas, so many selfless deeds, and now continues this legacy into his vanaprastha, being fully renounced in the forest, chanting his Gayatri mantra, and basically focusing 100% on the Supreme Lord. And then there comes the great, the grey, the fear downfall. And what is described to be the cause of Bharat Maharaj's downfall? It's far out, isn't it? Like we would think like, such a person, then he fell down. You know these stories, you say, this and that devotee, he blew up, he was so great, and then he fell down. No one knows where he went, he like disappeared. He's probably in Maya, I don't know, smoking pot in some corner. I don't know, that's like the normal story you get in your head. But what was the cause of fall down for Bharat Maharaj? It was compassion. I mean, like that, yes. Aha, interesting. Yes, no contact with devotees. That's interesting. What's she translated it? Sort of, yes, I got it. So, like basically, if a fall down initiates, it's probably through emotion. To intellectually conclude that it's a smart idea for me now to fall down is probably really rarely the case. I mean, like, what we see is, of course, if the emotion takes over the mind, the intelligence might follow the emotion and like serve the emotion, and that it will construct reasons and logical arguments in order to make it okay to follow the emotion. Like, we can construct any example that we go like, okay, I'm a sannyasi, I'm not, but I'm a brahmachari and actually live in celibacy, but there is a beautiful woman and I want to like hang out with her, engage with her, and then my mind can come up with so many things I've heard. Oh, actually, it's not good to suppress my sexuality. Maybe I have to care a bit more for my inner child, or I don't know. The mind starts to, the intelligence starts to argue why the emotion we have. Hey, maybe I have lustful emotions toward some lady. Okay, now I want to act on these emotions, and in order for us to do anything in life, we have to, for the moment of action, believe that it's the right thing to do. Otherwise, we won't do it. Right? So when I'm a smoker and I tell all my friends, oh God, smoking is so bad, I have to stop. But then when I put the cigarette to my mouth and I actually draw, for that moment, I have to be convinced that this is what I want, that this will give me happiness. Otherwise, I wouldn't do it. So that's sometimes the role the intellect takes, that it facilitates an emotion to like fully be expressed. So we have to, for example, I know smoking is bad for me and it will like kill me, maybe. It's like really not a good idea. But I'm so stressed and like actually I know that if I take this nicotine then my mind will calm down and in a sense it's actually good for me. So for that moment of smoking I have to convince myself, yes, this is the right thing to do. So also in the moment of fall down we basically have to explain to ourselves that this is the right thing to do. And my point though was that probably the initial thought of, okay, let me fall down, is not coming from the intellect. It's probably not an intellectual, okay, my next step to evolve as a human being is now to take this fall down. This is probably not a very likely occurrence. Yeah? It's probably coming from the mind, corrupting the intellect, and then the intellect making excuses for the mind to facilitate the fall down. Maybe that's how the intellect is involved, but otherwise I guess we can sort of understand that it's probably not an intellectual conclusion. And mostly for us, the emotions that will trigger a fall down might be lust, anger, greed, our usual friends, the guys from the past that we still know quite well. But not for Bharat Maharaj. For him, as a super pure soul, his downfall actually was triggered through compassion. And Prabhupada also explains in the purport, yes, this compassion was ill-placed. Compassion is a good idea, but compassion, Prabhupada puts it on the spiritual level. Like to be able to uplift oneself and others through spiritual practice, and this is the true form of compassion, as Prabhupada shows so many times. Yes, we feed people, but because it's prasadam, we go around and give books so that others can uplift, which is one of book distribution, according to Prabhupada, one of the highest expressions of compassion. Right? So this is yes, compassion is important, but somehow or other the compassion that arose in the heart of Bharat Maharaj led to his fall down. And now, though, I want to go a little bit into the defense of Bharat Maharaj, because somehow or other, whenever I say it led to his fall down, it feels a bit wrong. Even Prabhupada writes quite strongly, Maharaj Bharat, compassion for the deer was the beginning of his fall down into the material world. And whereas that's certainly true, because we were just discussing how Bharat Maharaj was hanging out there next to probably a lot of Shalagram Shilas at the Gandaki river, being fully absorbed in his Supreme Lord, even emanating ecstatic symptoms in the cause of it. Right? So, yes, a direct fall down from that super transcendental platform onto the platform of worrying more about the deer than his spiritual life. Yes, this fall down we can observe. But if we then read a little bit further and sneak peek a little bit further down the story, did he really fall down from his spiritual platform into material existence? And that then sort of reminds me, that question, pondering that, it reminds me of Arjuna and Krishna on the battlefield. Because Arjuna also had a fall down just before fighting. He was a great warrior and he was supposed to be like the leading arrow of the army, just like fully, this is his whole life, his whole duty, his whole essence is to fight and be a warrior. And there is the same Arjuna dropping his bow and crying that Krishna goes like, what's wrong with you, man? Like, you're a warrior. Like, how has, like, Krishna starts his conversation with Arjuna basically going like, you are lamenting for something that only idiots lament for. So basically, nice start of the conversation. Arjuna, you're a bit of an idiot, sort of thing. Arjuna completely losing his stance, losing his focus, losing his clear mind, losing his intellect, and just completely becoming overwhelmed by emotion. What is the emotion that caused his fall down in that moment? Mostly it's compassion. Because he gives then his arguments to Krishna, hey, I don't want to fight. Like, why? He shows renunciation. Why would I fight for this kingdom if I can't share it with my friends? Shows compassion. These people, they don't know what they're doing, basically. The Jesus quote, right? Forgive them, Father, they don't know what they're doing. Like, this is his attitude. This is the emotions that come up in him. It's not like, oh, these guys, they cheated us, or like as it would be for us, getting emotional because of anger, greed, or envy, similar emotions. No, his emotion that overwhelmed him and basically led to almost not being able to fight, which for Arjuna would be the greatest shame and tragedy that you could imagine, because there's no higher glory for a Kshatriya than to fight, to die in battle. They go straight up to the heavenly kingdoms at least, and Arjuna probably beyond. So again, his emotion that caused him was compassion, and then of course we get a whole conversation how Krishna explains to him that actually it's a good idea to fight and kill all these people. It's actually the compassionate thing to do, but that took Arjuna quite a while to experience. So I always found that really nice, and once with Purichan Prabhu, he explained that actually what happened is that this fall down of Arjuna, this like completely shattering, due to his compassion for the situation, due to his frustration of this horrible situation that is unfolding in front of him explaining his arguments one after the other. Hey, Krishna, I don't want to fight because this, I don't want to fight because that. The women will degrade. I won't be able to enjoy the kingdom anyway, and so on. All these arguments he gives, Purijan explained that actually they were qualifying him for receiving the teachings that followed later. Because his arguments were really good, and his arguments were actually coming from, only from the heart of a devotee could such arguments even arise in front of such an intense situation like fighting the battle of Kurukshetra. Like if you sometimes fall down and watch a movie, and then there's like Viking movies, and they start for battle, and they put stuff in their hair, and then roar, and woof, 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 right? We're going into battle, yes, this is like the mood, right? That we more normally expect from a strong warrior. But here we see just a devotee doing the service of a warrior, and then just in front of the situation of slaying his teachers and relatives, cannot bear this situation and completely opens up his heart basically to Krishna. So triggered by compassion, And then he brings one argument after the other, and there's a nice analysis. I think I read it also. Maybe it is surrender unto me. I'm not sure. We have to ask Krishna Premarupa. But he's just raising his eyebrows. No, but it's described somewhere that these different arguments Arjuna is giving, basically, each argument in a sense stands for a quality that he's showing, a devotional quality. So he's basically qualifying himself through his fall down, and okay, I shouldn't say it like that. But he's qualifying himself by showing these doubts and because he's showing, hey, I want to really be in tune with my heart, and some or other my heart tells me something else than my intellect. My emotion is basically covering me because it's just screaming it's wrong, and Krishna, that must be you, it must be the super soul, let me talk to you. Arjuna, of course, was pretty lucky because Krishna was like, all right, let's talk about this. For us it's sometimes a bit more tricky because Krishna might not just be our chariot driver. But in another sense, of course, he is, and there we are in the metaphorical aspect of the Bhagavad Gita. So when I was reading the story of Bharat Maharaj, I was sort of reminded of that. And later on in some of the purports, it's also like the Bhagavatam and Prabhupada in his purport starts to research, how could it be? How could he have fallen down? It's not logical that he got attached, that he decided to get attached to this deer in such an intense way. How could it happen? And the answer that I found in the purports was that it has to be due to some little left karma. That somehow through his life, through his decisions, maybe a previous life, there was some karma which triggered him into this action, almost like as being steered externally by karmic push, right? And for me, that sort of really made sense, that maybe, okay, there is a last bit of things that needs to be purified, because Bharat Maharaj was already in direct contact with Krishna. He was already in communication through ecstatic symptoms, and then comes the steer. In such a weird, mystical way, like you read the story and it's like, okay, there is this deer and it hears a lion roar and then it jumps and suddenly it gives birth. And then it gets frustrated and it just lies down and immediately dies. Like, the deer was immediately dead, the Bhagavatam says. It's so, oh my God, my child. Oh, okay, I'll go in this cave and I'm dead, right? So it's already, deer is gone because it says when Bharat Maharaj takes out the little deer, he knows that he doesn't have a mother anymore. So at that point, the other deer must have already been dead. Really? How is the... It's not normal, no? No? Maybe it is normal, but I don't think so. Even birth, giving birth, jumping over the thing and it just drops out. I mean, wow, okay? And then going in the river, deer is going into a cave, immediately dies, Bharat Maharaj is there, he's just chanting his Gayatri, like it's described. He's just in the middle, super absorbed, and he's looking at the river, and then this happens all in front of his eyes. Being in a super deep space, and then he's just seeing this. Imagine that, seeing that drowning deer. And Prabhupada says due to his compassion he fell down, Such a rascal, he saved that deer. What did he do? What was he thinking? He was in his Gayatri. Finish your Gayatri at least, See if you can do something after that maybe. No, this is not. No, we can understand, no? That the situation, what would it have done to us? Jai Shri Gauranta, Jai Jagannath Baladev, Subhadra. So, it's sort of a surreal scenario, and it seems to be quite orchestrated. It ended up in the Bhagavatam, so that's pretty good, pretty good record. And we can see that many of the stories in the Bhagavatam, there's sometimes this question, is the Bhagavatam, are these scriptures metaphorical? And we understand through our acharyas, no, they're not. These stories actually happened. But of course, many of these stories, most, maybe all, are orchestrated by Krishna. So are they metaphorical? Yes, in a sense, yes, because Krishna orchestrated them in the way that they are giving direct teachings to us. So nothing that happens here is just by chance. We have the king of the world, renounced, chanting his Gayatri at the Kali Kandaki river, we were discussing before you came, Krishna Premarupa, this ashram, it might be Muktinath. Huh? Do we know? Pulaha ashram. And chanting his Gayatri, being there fully absorbed. And then there is this deer and compassion and Prabhupada writes, and that was his fall down from the spiritual to the material platform. And then of course if we follow what happens to this, yes, Bharat Maharaj is falling down from his duties. He starts to take care of this deer, takes it home, goes everywhere with it, has it, and really struggles also with his sadhana, because then he prepares his kusha grass, then the deer comes, nibbles on it, or it's contaminated, sends it away, and this and that. He's fully, starting to fully meditate, getting absorbed into this deer, weirdly. And at one point the deer is not there and he can't find it, and he's so affectionate and so full of sorrow that he starts looking, and in this journey for looking he actually leaves his body, being fully absorbed in this deer, so that he gets triggered to take a deer form himself. But then of course what we see happening then, my God, this is amazing, is that yes, he is a deer, but he can remember his past life. That's pretty cool. So he decided, hey, I'm going to leave my home. Again, he takes basically his vanaprastha in his deer body pretty early, leaves his mother, and goes back to the ashram. And then I think listens to the sadhus, something, speculating now, but still engages again, coming back to basically with the desire, hey, I want to continue where I left off. Quite successfully so, because the next birth, Chadabharat. And there we have one of the most far-out stories that we have in the Bhagavatam. Then he takes this birth as this complete, and seems like Abhaduta, but fully logical Abhaduta, because he, all the stuff he does is fully out of his conclusion. Hey, I don't want to risk any contamination anymore, right? I don't want to be involved with any association that could contaminate me. Which is interesting, because Mataji before made the point, why did he fall down? Well, no devotee association, interesting point. But in his life after, his conclusion was a bit different. Because we learned, yes, there was some karma in him that triggered that situation, and that karmic situation, according to his realization, was probably triggered by bad association. So he was no more association. I don't want to be in any role, in any identification. I don't want to be king, or I don't want to be anything. I'm just going to be this Jadabharat, who is basically refusing to go in line with Vedic ritual and thought at all, apparently, externally. And then, of course, we have the peak of that story where he becomes the carrier of King Rahugana. And then there's this cool story where he carries the king around, but then shakes like anything. They took him because he was on the side of the road and super strong man. So they felt okay, we need a carrier, come. And he was doing a really bad job, and it was rocky like hell, and the king was really getting annoyed. And then, of course, confronting him about it. And then found out this man was rocking like anything because he wouldn't step on any ant. And he would prefer not stepping on an ant than giving the king a rocky ride. Right? So his priorities were clear. And then, of course, we get this amazing conversation between King Rahugana and Bharat Maharaj, where in the beginning King is proud and scolding him, and then slowly they turn. And I think in that teaching, even King Bharata tells him, hey, I am in this body today, and you're a king today, but in another life it could be different. Well, funnily enough, in another life it was different. He was the ruler of the entire world, now teaching him. And who knows what would have happened to King Rahugana if Bharat Maharaj would have gone straight back to Godhead, not going that detour through a deer and through Jadabharat, and giving him the teachings that he received. Who knows? Who knows what Krishna does? And who knows what, well, I guess where this whole story leads me in my thought process is I like this saying that if you want to make Krishna laugh, go in front of the altar and tell him your plans. Right? We don't know what's going to happen to us. We don't also know what we can uphold, how strong we are, what will happen to our life, where we go, where will we be swept up, what are we overwhelmed by? Some emotion, maybe of compassion. Maybe it leads us to do things that contaminate our devotional service and apparently let us fall down, right? And for me, it's a nice thought that even in these times of struggle, in these times of fall down, Krishna is none less involved. Maybe even more. As we can see here, his devotee is making some bad choices, not being able to maybe protect himself from his emotions. And Krishna takes it and just plays with it, like if you're in a game and then, I don't know, of table tennis, and the balls are passed, and then he spins it in a certain way that it like drops something differently. And he uses it. He uses the decisions of his devotees to then, oh, this is what you want to do, okay. And then he reacts to it. And the path just becomes new and maybe even more glorious. Not for us to think that it doesn't matter what decisions we take, or we can do whatever we want. That's not the point I want to head at all. But still, that if our heart is sincere, and we can find nowhere that Bharat Maharaj's heart stopped being sincere, or that he consciously decided, I don't want to think about Krishna anymore, or that he like, oh God, all this what I did, it was so stupid, I did all this sadhana, and actually I should... No, none of this. He was just overwhelmed by a beautiful emotion of compassion toward a completely shelterless and vulnerable living entity. So, where's the fault? Where? It's hard to point out. Like as we just tried, like, you see this deer drowning, what are you going to do? And then attachment arises. Okay, this is how the world works, right? Yes, it was his decision that led to what happened, but you can see that his intention stayed pure. And Krishna therefore reciprocated in such a wonderful way. So, when we work through devotional life with all the things we have to uphold, with all the pressure on our shoulders in terms of trying to keep purifying and keep growing as devotees. When we, for example, take our vows of celibacy, of chanting rounds, not eating things, not gambling, not intoxicating, then these are vows that are glorious to uphold. And on this thought, though, my Guru Maharaj taught me also that if through circumstance, if through the powerful waves of the material ocean, we drown or shift away from maybe one of our vows or one thing that we want to uphold, then if we follow them and if we stick with them, these vows will confirm every step in our devotional service. And if we sometimes flow away from them, then they will remind us every day of our duties in devotional service. They work in the positive and the negative, and I'm convinced that Krishna does the same. If we are fully there, and yes, Hare Krishna, and I get up at 2 o'clock and I chant and everything, then Krishna is very happy, and we are making spiritual advancement very swiftly. And when we get completely knocked off that position, Krishna's appreciation for everything we've done already, and for our intention in the heart, and the love we care for him, and maybe now cannot access so easily because the material world is a tough place to be, Krishna is nonetheless involved. And will make amazing plans on how to again connect us. And in the case of Bharat Maharaj, maybe there was some ego, maybe there was something left, maybe there was something of him being such a great personality. And maybe it was a blessing for him to experience life as a deer, and then life as a complete idiot from the outside seen as Chata Bharat. Maybe this was the last piece he needed to really fully become 100% humble in the service of the Lord. Because the story of Chata Bharat, then we see a saint like paralleled by hardly anyone through the entire history of devotional service. So just some thoughts. It's a bit of controversial thoughts, but I thought let's take this idea of what's going on, actually what we mean by Maharaj Bharat fell down if 2 lives later he completely got liberated as back to the Supreme Personality of Godhead as a complete saint. So if you have any thoughts to that, any questions or comments, it would be really nice to hear. And, yes. Maybe I said something that was completely off.
Something.
You have something.
Hare Krishna, thank you, Prabhu, for your class and the thought of why it happens, and also you compared to Arjun, who also came in a situation where he was in Maya. There is a purport in the 12th chapter where Bharat Maharaj speaks to King Rahugana, And in that purport, Srila Prabhupada gives quite an insight what was Bharat Maharaj's fault. And like you say, it's not a fault that this, in the sense that this came up because he was not fully pure yet. And Prabhupada says here, if despite a very rigid life in devotional service, Bharat Maharaj did not consult the spiritual master when he became overly attached to a deer. Consequently, he became strongly attached to the deer, and forgetting the spiritual routine, he fell down. And if you look at Arjuna's example, wow. It happened to him, but he had someone he could turn to who guided him, and then he could overcome it. And Bharat Maharaj didn't have that.
Which was Mataji's point in a sense.
Yeah.
But there was no devotees to actually far out. So that's an addition, not a question.
I just
it's really nice. Yeah, thank you. Very good.
It really clarified to me.
Yeah.
It's orchestrated, like you say, from Krishna, this whole pastime, to show us something, but then to still ask the question, how could he actually have, not to accept that this is just right. No, Prabhupada points out, he fell down in a certain way, even though it's a very sublime way of falling down. Yeah. But that what was the mistake, and I guess that's the Bhagavatam. It really takes things auseinandernehmen, and then we see really in minute detail how the spiritual practice works. And it reminds me, maybe Krishna Prema Prabhu, you can confirm, in the Madhurya Kadambini, there is some statement that Sadhu Sangha stays the most important, maybe it's Madhurya Kadambini, the most important limb, even in prema.
Krishna Jagati Thakur quotes a shloka where it says that even on the platform of prema, the Sadhu Sangha remains most important item. Which is a powerful statement.
And this actually brings up a thought, like also, just on that topic, also our responsibility as devotees and as a community of devotees. Because, we know that many devotees who are struggling and who are falling down, many have struggled to then still feel comfortable in devotee association. And I do think that it's our responsibility to hold up them, us, whoever it is, feeling comfortable, especially in that time. Because so many, they struggle, and then they do not feel welcome anymore. And it's actually in these times of struggle that we should make them feel the most welcome. And we should learn as devotees to be honest with ourselves and then also honest to others. And help them to say you can tell me what happened, we can talk about this, because I'm not perfect. And because the most important thing to do, I had a really nice talk with my Param Guru Chayadvaita Maharaj last year. It was really nice. He took so much time. It was wonderful. And I was talking to him about mistakes I've made in my life that I cannot undo. And that I'm struggling with them, and some of them I struggle with every day. And then you have feelings of guilt and things. And he responded in such a sweet way. First of all, he was basically saying, I know exactly what you mean. It's no, Maharaj, you don't. He was because he was saying I'm quite a sharp mind, and I've said so many things that upset and hurt devotees. And he also is struggling with that, he was saying. But he said, but whatever we did and wherever we are in our life, it's such a nice statement. He said, if we ever think that in this moment, whatever moment it is, wherever state we are in, wherever we are, there is any reason for us not to serve Krishna right now, then that reason is Maya. So if we're anywhere in any state, doing anything in life, if we ever think that there's any reason not to serve Krishna in this moment, then that reason we think of is Maya. I really like that. So if we can help someone who is maybe struggling, make him feel really comfortable and really warm, and be that Krishna in front of him right now, that Arjuna had to like, hey, I'm struggling, and then we can say, Krishna, well, Krishna said, yeah, it is a bit of an idiot argument there, Arjuna, you're making, but okay, let's take it. And basically saying, yeah, I can understand where you're coming from. Even your doubts and everything, even qualifies you to learn even more from me. So, a wonderful situation if a devotee fell down. In a sense, he has a beautiful opportunity to start up with a lot more humility than he probably had the day before yesterday. So, I don't know, why not take it as a chance and help us to really feel comfortable? Of course, keeping that balance to then not make a fall on something, oh, well, you fell down, whatever. No, that's not the point at all. But if someone is struggling, then even more important to really make him feel welcome. And it would be so nice if I could find a community, find a movement where someone could walk in here right now and tell their story, and there would be no thought of, ooh, or this fell down, it's contaminated. But that we can just hear it with full compassion and include those individuals even more. That would be wonderful. Anyway, I just thought that also came up to make it a bit practical for us. But yes, Mataji really wanted it. I just need a translator, I think. Huh? Oh, wow. Translator in the close. Wow, this place is amazing. Far question. It's nice. So I'm not sure if I'm the most qualified to answer that question, but I'll try. Compassion itself, like pretty much just one thing that I understood in that way with the gunas is that pretty much any thing, any quality, any emotion, any physical thing, anything in this world that we can perceive, be it gross, be it energetical, be it subtle, is made of the gunas. These are basically the key ingredients of anything that we experience. It's basically like it's described to be like the three primary colors. So in any painting we look at these three colors in unlimited variety. So this is the gunas. So compassion, I would disagree that compassion is only there in sattva. Compassion itself is is the emotion, is the object, and it can appear in sattva, in tamas, or in rajas, and depending on which guna it's predominated by, the quality changes. So, for example, another example, Krishna in the 6th chapter, he talks about sleep and eating. He says the yogi doesn't eat too much, doesn't eat too little, but eats enough. So this is the gunas. Too much sleep, tamas. So sleep is neutral. Too much sleep, tamas. Too little sleep, rajas. Just enough sleep, the perfect amount of sleep, that's sattva. Eating, same thing, he also gives that example. Too much eating, rajas, too little eating, no, maybe the other way around. But basically, the extremes are the rajas and the tamas, and then the balance in between is the sattva. Like if we do the right thing. If we do something very passionate, then it's going high up and falling down quickly. If we do something tamasic, it doesn't start up at all. Sattva is the golden middle path. So compassion is there in tamas, compassion is there in rajas, compassion is there in sattva, and depending on the quality, then the emotion changes a little bit. Maybe a drug addict might be compassionate because his friend can't get a dose of heroin. That might be quite a tamasic form of compassion. I might be very compassionate because a friend of mine is an extreme sportler and he broke his leg and now he can't perform his sport and he can't pursue his career and can't be super famous, and that triggers strong compassion in me. That might be more compassion in rajas. And if I see that someone is maybe like limited in their expression, in their abilities to uplift themselves, is maybe like, maybe falling down from a pure standard of life, or maybe I can see that they are not in an as pure point as they could be, and I could help them. Compassion that comes from such a situation might be compassion in sattva. But compassion itself, the emotion, the actual item of compassion, the artifact that is compassion, any of these shapes, rajas, tamas, or sattva, are simply, and we understand that the gunas, if I draw a picture with these three primary colors, the picture is just a reflection, a representation of actual reality of the picture. So compassion in rajas, compassion in tamas, compassion in sattva, it's all not real compassion. True, pure compassion is the compassion that originates in Krishna. Is that compassion that Krishna has toward us if he, for example, tries to help and uplift us. And this is the actual compassion, untainted by the gunas. This is the pure spiritual emotion that originates in Krishna, and that of course we also have access to. So I would also disagree that in spiritual life we have to give up compassion. But just as every other aspect of our life, we have to purify the compassion so that at one point it's not even tinged anymore by sattva, but it's pure transcendental compassion. And this is also what Prabhupada says here. He says not the compassion itself was wrong in the purport, but he says like how the quality of the compassion was wrong. I don't know which guna it would be in now, but it was material compassion nonetheless, in a sense. Thinking, caring for that deer will uplift him. And Prabhupada therefore gives the hint in the purport of the verse we just read. We should be compassionate by raising one from the material platform to the spiritual platform. So this is a form of transcendental compassion. And of course, when we see what Krishna does with Bharat Maharaj and we turn it, then that's the compassion he has, because he orchestrated a life for Bharat Maharaj that lifted him from the material to the spiritual platform. Not sure if that answered your question. I tried. Happy? Okay. Done. Any other comment to that? Was a nice question, I think. It's good. You have a thought? Happy? Top? Okay. Good, so thank you very much. Bharat Maharaj ki jai, Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Jai Nitya Gaur Premanande.
Hare
И он